The early morning mist hung low over Lake Tahoe as Marcus Bennett loaded the last of his equipment into his backpack. June 17, 2024, marked his third season as a wilderness guide in the Sierra Nevada mountains. At 34, he had built a reputation as one of the most reliable guides in the area, known for his meticulous attention to detail and encyclopedic knowledge of the terrain. "Weather report says it might rain later," said Elaine, the station manager at the Sierra Wilderness Outpost, a small log building serving as the base for several guide operations in the area. "You sure you don't want to postpone?" Marcus zipped up his waterproof jacket and smiled. "It's just a light rain forecast. Besides, I promised Dr. Peterson I'd survey the eastern trails this week. The Forest Service wants updated trail conditions before the tourist season really kicks in." Elaine nodded and handed him a thermos of coffee. "Just be careful around the old Pinewood site. Those cabins aren't maintained anymore." Marcus paused. "Pinewood? That's the camp where those kids disappeared, right?" 6 years ago this month, Elaine replied, her voice dropping slightly. 15 children. Some say the Forest Service should have torn those buildings down years ago, but the legal issues with the property ownership are still ongoing. Just don't go inside any of the structures, okay? They're not safe." Marcus nodded solemnly. The Pinewood Camp incident had been national news in 2018. 15 children, aged 9 to 13, had vanished during an overnight camping activity, despite the largest search operation in the region's history, involving federal agents, search and rescue teams from 3 states and hundreds of volunteers. Not a single child had been found. The case had eventually gone cold, leaving a hole in the heart of the community and becoming one of America's most disturbing unsolved mysteries. As Marcus hiked the familiar trail eastward, the physical exertion helped clear his mind. The forest was alive with early summer activity, birds calling, squirrels darting between trees, and the occasional rustling in the underbrush. By midday, dark clouds began rolling in from the west, earlier than the forecast had predicted. "Great," Marcus muttered, checking his GPS. He was about 8 miles from the outpost, with at least 4 more to go before completing his survey route. The wind picked up, bending the tops of the pines and bringing with it the unmistakable smell of rain. When the first heavy drops began to fall, Marcus quickened his pace, searching for suitable shelter. According to his map, he was near the edge of the old Pinewood Camp property. Despite Elaine's warning, the rapidly deteriorating weather left him little choice. The rain was falling in sheets by the time the first cabin came into view. It was smaller than he expected. A simple A-frame structure with boarded windows and a sagging porch. Faded lettering above the door read, "Office." Marcus hesitated on the porch, water streaming from his jacket. Lightning flashed, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. Making his decision, he tested the door handle. It turned with surprising ease. The interior was dark and musty, illuminated only by the grey light, filtering through cracks in the boarded windows. Marcus switched on his flashlight and swept the beam across the room. Dust particles danced in the light. The space was largely empty, except for a toppled filing cabinet, a desk missing one leg, and a chair lying on its side. "Hello?" Marcus called out reflexively, though he knew the place had been abandoned for years. His voice echoed slightly before being swallowed by the sound of rain hammering on the roof. As he moved deeper into the cabin, his boot caught on something, sending it skittering across the wooden floor. Marcus directed his flashlight toward the sound. A small book with a faded blue cover lay open, face down on the dusty floorboards. Curious, Marcus picked it up and brushed off the dust. It was a diary, its pages yellowed but intact. Inside the front cover, written in neat childish handwriting, was a name, "Property of Emma Winters, Cabin Bluebird, Pinewood Summer Camp." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with his wet clothes. Emma Winters had been one of the 15 missing children. The date on the first entry was June 10th, 2018, 2 days before the disappearances. Marcus settled on the rickety chair, the rain drumming a persistent rhythm on the roof above him. With careful fingers, he turned to the first entry in Emma's diary, June 10th, 2018. Dear Diary, Mom got me this notebook before I left for camp. She said I should write down all my adventures so I can remember them forever. This is my first time at sleepaway camp, and I already miss home a little. But my cabin. Mates are really nice, especially Lily. Our counselor, Ms. Jessie, says we're going to have the best summer ever. Today, we had swim tests in the lake, and I passed for the deep end. The water was freezing, though. We also did arts and crafts. I made a friendship bracelet for Lily and one for Mom when I get home. Tomorrow, we're learning how to build campfires. Peter, he's in Cabin Eagle, says he already knows how because his dad taught him, but I think he's just showing off. Lights out soon. Emma W. Marcus turned the page. The next entry was dated June 11th, 2018. Dear Diary, something weird happened today. After lunch, Tyler and Josh, they're 12 from Cabin Falcon, said they saw a man watching us from the woods during archery practice. They told Mr. Rick, our head counselor, but when he went to check, there was nobody there. Ms. Jessie said they were just trying to scare the younger kids, but they seemed really serious. Josh said the man had a camera. We had our campfire lessons today. I didn't get mine to light, but Ms. Jessie said I'll get better with practice. We're having a big bonfire tonight with marshmallows. Oh, and we're going on an overnight hike tomorrow. We'll be sleeping in tents in the wilderness area. Ms. Jessie says it's totally safe, and the counselors do it with campers every year. We have to pack our bags tonight. I'm a little nervous, but excited too. Emma Marcus felt his skin prickle as he read the final entry, dated June 12th, the day of the disappearances. June 12th, 2018. We're getting ready for the hike now. Everyone's excited except Sarah, who's scared of sleeping outside. Ms. Jessie told her she could stay behind with the nurse if she wanted, but Sarah decided to come anyway. Tyler and Josh are acting weird today. They keep whispering and looking at the woods. I asked them what was wrong, but they told me to mind my own business. Lily found something strange this morning. A little ceramic figure by the edge of the woods near our cabin. It looks like a tiny bird. I've never seen anything like it. She was going to keep it, but Mr. Rick saw it and took it away. He seemed upset and asked exactly where she found it. I have to go now. We're meeting at the trailhead in 10 minutes. Next time I write, I'll be back for my first wilderness adventure, Emma. But there were no more entries. The rest of the pages were blank. Marcus sat back, his mind racing. The diary by itself wasn't evidence of anything except that Emma had been at the camp before disappearing. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that these innocent entries somehow contained important information. Thunder crashed outside, and Marcus jumped. He checked his watch, 3:45 p.m. The storm showed no signs of letting up. He decided to wait it out and then head directly back to the outpost with the diary. As he stood to stretch his legs, something caught his eye. A faint line of what looked like text on the next blank page after Emma's final entry. Marcus angled his flashlight and could just make out indentations in the paper, as if someone had pressed hard while writing on the page above, which had been torn out. Heart pounding, Marcus rummaged in his backpack for a pencil. Using a technique he'd learned in a forensics documentary, he lightly rubbed the side of the pencil lead across the page. Slowly, the impression of words began to appear. He's watching us from the trees. The counselors aren't listening. We have to. The sentence ended abruptly. Marcus was so absorbed in his discovery that he almost missed the sound, a soft creak from somewhere outside the cabin. He froze, listening intently. It could have been the wind or the old structure settling, but then it came again, more distinctly this time. The unmistakable sound of a footstep on the wooden porch. Marcus doused his flashlight and moved silently toward the window, carefully peering through a crack in the boards. The rain had slackened to a drizzle, and visibility had improved. At first, he saw nothing but wet foliage and mist. Then a shadow moved near the tree line, a human figure, tall and motionless, partially obscured by a pine tree. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. He watched as the figure slowly retreated into the denser woods and disappeared from view. Once certain the person was gone, Marcus quickly packed Emma's diary in a waterproof compartment of his backpack. He needed to get back to civilization and turn this over to authorities. The storm had passed, leaving behind a heavy mist that clung to the ground and twisted between the trees. As Marcus prepared to leave, he noticed something he'd missed before, a trapdoor in the floor behind the desk, partially hidden by years of dust and debris. Curiosity overrode caution, and he knelt to examine it. The trapdoor had no visible handle but yielded when Marcus pressed on one edge. It swung open with a groan of rusty hinges, revealing a small storage space below. Using his flashlight, Marcus could see several plastic containers stacked neatly inside. He reached down and pulled out the topmost container. Inside were files, dozens of them, each labeled with a child's name. With trembling hands, Marcus opened one labeled Winters, Emma. Inside was a comprehensive file on the 11-year-old girl. Medical information, emergency contacts, a liability waiver signed by her parents, and several photographs of Emma at various camp activities. Marcus quickly went through the other files. Each contained similar information on different children, all from the missing group. But what caught his attention was a separate manila envelope at the bottom of the container, unmarked, except for a handwritten note that read, "Incident documentation, confidential." Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance images showing what appeared to be the camp perimeter. One photo showed a figure standing among the trees, partially concealed but clearly watching the camp. Another showed what looked like the same person closer to the cabins. The photos were dated June 8th through June 11th, 2018, the days leading up to the disappearances. Also in the envelope was a handwritten report from Richard Mercer, head counselor, dated June 11th, 2018, 2nd. Incident of unauthorized individual observed on camp property. Security protocols initiated. Local sheriff notified, but no deputy available for immediate response due to highway accident south of town. Security staff to maintain hourly perimeter checks. Overnight wilderness excursion postponed pending security. Assessment. Marcus stared at the last line in disbelief. The report clearly stated the overnight hike was postponed, yet according to all official accounts, the children had disappeared during that very excursion. Something didn't add up. He photographed everything with his phone before carefully returning, the files exactly as he'd found them. As he closed the trapdoor, his flashlight illuminated something scratched into the underside of the wooden door, a series of numbers, 39.0997 digra, 120.0244 digra. Marcus recognized them immediately as GPS coordinates. He entered them into his phone and was startled to see they indicated a location less than 3 miles from his current position, deep in the undeveloped wilderness area northwest of the old camp. Checking the time, 4:30 p.m., Marcus calculated he had about 3 hours of daylight left. The responsible thing would be to return to the outpost immediately and report his findings to the authorities. But those coordinates nagged at him. 3 miles, less than an hour's hike for someone with his experience. Decision made, Marcus set out, moving quickly through the dripping forest. The coordinates led him away from marked trails into increasingly rugged terrain. As he hiked, the mist began to thicken again, reducing visibility and lending an eerie quality to the landscape. After about 40 minutes of difficult hiking, Marcus checked his GPS. He was close, within 100 yards of the target coordinates. Looking around, he saw nothing unusual, just dense forest on a moderate slope. He continued forward, scanning carefully. The GPS indicated he had arrived at the exact coordinates. Marcus stood in a small clearing, turning slowly, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. Then he noticed a cairn, a small stack of rocks that seemed deliberately placed at the base of a large pine tree. Marcus approached and carefully removed the top rocks. Beneath them was a small metal container, the kind hikers use to store emergency supplies. Inside was a USB drive and a folded note that read simply, "The truth about Pinewood. Show them we were here." The handwriting matched Emma's diary. Marcus's hand trembled as he pocketed the USB drive. The implications were staggering. This suggested that at least one of the missing children had returned to this spot after their disappearance. Suddenly, a twig snapped nearby. Marcus whirled around to see a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. A woman in her mid-30s, wearing a Forest Service uniform. "Marcus Bennett," she called, her hand resting near her sidearm. "I'm Ranger Diane Holt. The outpost reported you might be in this area. You're off the designated survey route." Marcus raised his hands instinctively. "I can explain," he began, but the ranger cut him off. "You need to come with me. There's another storm system moving in fast, and this area isn't safe." Her tone left no room for argument. As they hiked back toward the ranger station, a different route than Marcus had taken to the outpost, he debated whether to tell Ranger Holt about his discoveries. Something held him back. The head counselor's report contradicting the official story, the coordinates hidden in a place only staff would know about, and now a Forest Service ranger who just happened to find him in the middle of nowhere. "How? Did you know exactly where I was?" Marcus asked casually. "Your GPS tracker," she replied without hesitation. "All guides are required to carry them, remember? When you went off course, it triggered an alert." Marcus nodded, though he knew that the trackers only showed general locations, not precise coordinates like the small clearing. He decided to test the waters. "I was up by the old Pinewood camp, took shelter in one of the cabins during the storm." Ranger Holt's stride faltered almost imperceptibly. "Those buildings are condemned. You shouldn't have gone inside." "I found something interesting there," Marcus continued, watching her reaction carefully. "A diary belonging to one of the missing children." This time, Ranger Holt stopped completely. "You need to turn that over immediately. It's evidence in an ongoing federal investigation." "I thought the case was cold," Marcus replied. "No case involving missing children is ever truly closed," she said, her voice tight. "We should move faster. The storm's coming." They walked in silence for another 20 minutes before reaching a small ranger station. Marcus wasn't familiar with. It wasn't on any of his maps. "We'll wait out the storm here," Ranger Holt said, unlocking the door. "Radio reception is better than at the outpost." The interior was Spartan. A desk, radio equipment, a few chairs, and maps on the walls. As Ranger Holt busied herself with the radio, Marcus studied one of the maps. It showed the wilderness area with zones marked in different colors, including a large red zone that encompassed the coordinates he'd visited. "Restricted area, Federal Research Project," read the legend next to the red zone. "Research on..." "What?" Marcus asked, pointing to the map. Ranger Holt glanced up. "Ecological impact study, nothing interesting." "Now about that diary..." Before Marcus could respond, the radio crackled to life. "Sierra Station, this is Control. Do you have the guide?" Ranger Holt pressed the transmit button. Affirmative. He was in Zone Red, may have found sensitive materials. There was a pause before the reply came. "Understood. Secure any materials. Team en route. ETA 20 minutes. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with his damp clothes. He casually moved toward the door. "I should radio Elaine at the outpost. Let her know I'm okay." "Already taken care of," Ranger Holt said, her hand again hovering near her sidearm. Please take a seat, Mr. Bennett. We need to discuss your unauthorized presence in a restricted research area. Marcus's mind raced. He still had the USB drive in his pocket and his phone with the photos of the files. The diary was in his backpack, which now sat on the floor between them. "Can I at least get some water?" he asked, indicating a cooler in the corner. Ranger Holt nodded, and as Marcus moved toward the cooler, he deliberately knocked his backpack over, spilling some of its contents. "Sorry," he muttered, bending to gather his things. As he did, he palmed his car keys and the USB drive together. "Leave it," Ranger Holt ordered sharply. "Just sit down." The atmosphere in the small cabin had changed completely. Marcus knew with certainty that whatever team was coming wasn't standard Forest Service personnel. "What really happened to those children?" he asked quietly. Ranger Holt's face hardened. "That's classified information, Mr. Bennett, but I can tell you they weren't the first to go missing in these woods, and if certain people have their way, they won't be the last." The radio crackled again. "Sierra Station, team diverted due to weather conditions. New ETA 40 minutes, maintain secure position." Marcus saw his chance. "I need to use the restroom." "There's an outhouse around back," Ranger Holt said after a moment's hesitation. "Don't try anything foolish." Outside, the storm clouds had indeed returned, darkening the sky prematurely. Marcus walked toward the outhouse, fully aware of Ranger Holt watching from the doorway. Once inside the small structure, he quickly located a loose board in the back wall, a feature common in these older outhouses designed for ventilation. With strength born of desperation, Marcus pried the board free and squeezed through the narrow opening. The moment his feet hit the ground outside, he ran, not back toward the trail where he would surely be intercepted, but deeper into the woods, using the approaching storm as cover. Behind him, he heard Ranger Holt's shout of discovery and then a radio call for backup. Marcus ran harder than he ever had in his life, using every bit of his knowledge of the terrain to put distance between himself and his pursuer. After what seemed like hours, but was likely only 40 minutes of desperate flight through increasingly heavy rain, Marcus broke through the tree line onto a familiar service road. By some miracle, a truck was approaching, a local logging company vehicle. Marcus flagged it down frantically. The driver, an older man with a weathered face, took one look at Marcus's condition and opened the passenger door without question. "You look like you've seen a ghost, son," he commented as they drove toward the main highway. "Not a ghost," Marcus replied, still catching his breath. "Something much worse." 2 days later, Marcus sat in the office of Special Agent Diana Rivera of the FBI in Sacramento. On the desk between them were Emma's diary, the USB drive, and printouts of the photos Marcus had taken. "This is significant evidence, Agent," Rivera said carefully after reviewing everything. "Especially this." She tapped the USB drive, which contained dozens of video files showing the children in what appeared to be a research facility, along with data files labeled Project Harmony, Cognitive Development Study. "They were experimenting on them, weren't they?" Marcus asked quietly. Agent Rivera's professional demeanor cracked slightly. "It appears a rogue group within multiple agencies was conducting unauthorized research on cognitive development in children. The Pinewood incident was covered up at the highest levels when it went wrong. And the Forest Service? Some elements were complicit in maintaining the restricted zone and deterring accidental discoveries," she confirmed. "We've had suspicions for years, but lacked concrete evidence." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now?" Agent Rivera closed the file in front of her. "Now we find those children, or what happened to them. The coordinates you discovered have already led us to 2 more data caches. We believe at least some of the children may still be alive, possibly held in a facility outside U.S. jurisdiction." "And what about me?" Marcus asked. Agent Rivera's expression was grim. "Officially, you're now a material witness in a federal investigation. Unofficially, You might want to consider taking that job offer in Colorado you mentioned, immediately. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the warning. As he stood to leave, Agent Rivera added, "Mr. Bennett, thank you for not walking away from this. Most people would have." Outside the federal building, Marcus paused to look at his phone. The job offer from the Rocky Mountain Wilderness Center had come through again, more insistent this time. Within a week, he would be in Colorado, far from Lake Tahoe and the secrets of Pinewood Camp. But as he walked to his car, Marcus couldn't shake the image of Emma's final diary entry or the words impressed on the missing page. "He's watching us from the trees. The counselors aren't listening. We have to." He knew with absolute certainty that somewhere, perhaps in another country, Emma Winters and the other children, now teenagers, were waiting to be found. And he had helped set that search in motion. The diary had been silent for 6 years, but its message had finally been heard.